Welcome to Caskets and Cocktails, Memoirs of a Cemetery Dude. Get ready for a hilarious dive into the world of death care where cemetery industry veteran Mr. Danny and his daughter Katie will answer all those crazy questions you've been dying to ask. Go ahead and pour yourself a drink, pull up a rocking chair, and get ready for some laughs because we guarantee Caskets and Cocktails will be the last ones to let you down.
Hey guys, Katie Lovert here.
Hey, I'm Danny Faulkner. I'm her daddy.
And welcome to Caskets and Cocktails. And our last episode was all about the funeral home.
Yes, it was.
All about it. And so today we are talking all about the cemetery.
Oh, man. That's right up my alley.
That is right up your alley, right? So most of your time's been in the cemetery industry specifically. But so we have Joel who sent us a note in, and he lives in Nevada.
Uh-huh.
And he wants to know, have you ever seen that movie Poltergeist?
Yes.
The original, it's so scary.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
When they grabbed that little girl in the TV.
Oh, yeah. Ugh,
Yeah.
It's freaky.
Yeah, I didn't watch TV for a month.
Yeah, probably me neither. I think I was like,
You were probably way too young to see that movie.
I was way too young. That's why I stopped for a second, because I totally saw it at a friend's house and I was not supposed to. But anywho, so Joel wants to know if anything like Poltergeist has ever gone down where you've had to move a cemetery for some reason, or maybe discovered that a cemetery was hidden and then found.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact.
You've had a weird life, Mr. Danny.
Now, let's get in a little history here.
Okay.
Okay. Have you ever heard of a little town in California? It's called San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard
I think I might have heard of it. I think
Yeah.
I've been there a few handful of times.
It's got a bridge there. A lot of people go.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
blue, right?
Yeah. But up on top of this hill they call Knob Hill.
Yes.
All right. In the 1880s, I guess, that was called Founders Cemetery. And it's where all of the founding fathers of San Francisco were buried.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
So they could survey their entire city.
they could,
Yeah.
if they would have been left alone.
Oh, ew.
And just outside of San Francisco is a little town called, I think it's Coma. And, or something like that. But anyway, so what they did was they took all of the headstones up from this cemetery and dumped them in the bay.
Oh.
And dug everybody up and moved them to Coma.
Why didn't they take the headstones with them?
Because it was just too heavy,
Too
I
heavy.
guess.
Oh, okay.
And anyway, there was this big, like, common burial ground with a big plaque. Here lie the founding fathers of San Francisco.
You're joking.
No, there is no cemetery in San Francisco.
Huh.
They're all outside of San Francisco because, you know, it's a very, very expensive place.
Yes.
So they're not going to waste money
Real estate.
on burial.
Yeah.
So outside of town is where all the cemeteries are. And they are unbelievably gorgeous.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And they're like, you go down the road and there's one right after the other, and it's just beautiful.
That's kind of freaky.
Yeah, it is. But that's an example of moving the cemetery that everybody overlooks.
Yeah.
Because you're not supposed to say anything bad about San Francisco. Okay? Because if you do, you'll get a stomachache or something.
I don't know. I don't know what happens. So.
Something about, but it was almost 10 years to the day when they moved the founding fathers that the great earthquake occurred and burnt San Francisco down, and thousands of people got killed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I wondered.
I know. But see,
speaking of Poltergeist, that is very Poltergeist-esque.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
And they built a big fancy
They're
church.
like, we will show you.
They built a big fancy, I think it's an Episcopal church, and it's still standing. and all the other buildings around it collapsed and burned and all that.
Really?
And now, of course, it's all high-rise, multi-million-dollar high-rises and all that stuff.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and I met a guy. I was at a convention in, I'm wanting to say Michigan. Anyway, real nice guy. And he had a company that all they did was move cemeteries.
That was what I was going to ask. Like, okay, so I get it. A long time ago, people would just dig up bones, throw them in the back of their wagon, I guess, and then haul them off and just dump them in a spot.
Yeah.
But does that happen? That doesn't happen today, right? Or does it?
Yes, it does.
It does?
Yes, it does. What happens, it's a lot more restrictive now.
Okay.
For instance, let's say that you see these old country cemeteries beside a busy road. Okay, and looks like maybe just 40 or 50 people buried there. All right?
Right.
Well, you know and I know that road's going to turn into a 5-lane road.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, what's going to happen to that cemetery? What's going to happen to all the dead people?
Do they just pave over? I'm guessing they move them, right?
They do. They call these companies they do this. They have to do it strictly by the law. You have to run so many ads. You have to be on TV, on radio, newspaper, all these public avenues of telling people, hey, we're going to move this cemetery. And then they take pictures, graft it out to where they know where every gravel is.
Oh, wow.
And then they start digging them up. And especially the old country cemeteries. You know, they didn't have vaults. They just wooden caskets. Well, there's nothing there.
Oh, yeah. I guess it's just
what
dirt.
they'll do is they'll dig down to where it comes to a layer of black dirt.
Okay.
And that black dirt is whoever was buried there.
Yeah.
You know. And so they get all of that black dirt up and put it in a box. Along with his name and da-da-da-da-da.
Okay.
And then they go to the next one.
Do they move the headstones
Yes,
too? And so they just replace it, like they bury the box, they put the headstone up.
Yes.
Now, who pays for this?
For instance, if they're going to widen a road, okay, DOT pays for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Because, I mean...
what else are they going to do?
Right. They can't do anything.
Yeah.
Now, in the state of Tennessee, it's illegal to condemn a cemetery. Okay? A perpetual care commercial cemetery.
Okay.
You can condemn country cemeteries, church cemeteries, things like that. But a commercial cemetery, you cannot condemn. Now, I made a guy across the street from my cemetery $1 million. Because they were going to widen the road. And they came to me and they said, we're going to need the front part of your cemetery.
And you said, no thanks.
And I said, no, I appreciate it. I'm going to opt out of this one. And they said, you don't have a choice. I said, you haven't read the law.
Yeah.
And they said, what are you talking about? And so I said, go back, get your lawyer, ask him to read the law. They came back, went to the guy across the street, overpaid $1 million for his property, and they took the road on that side.
Oh, were you kicking yourself?
Yeah, I was going, how stupid are you?
Yeah, way to go, Danny.
Yeah. So anyway.
We'd be doing this podcast in a plush studio, drinking fancy, snazzy cocktails.
Instead of cheap stuff.
Instead of boxed wine.
I don't drink wine, by the way, folks. But anyway.
And I don't mind boxed wine.
Yeah, expensive wine gives me a headache.
Yeah.
But moving cemeteries is quite common.
That is crazy. I never would think. You don't really think about it, but then also I think in this show you don't think about any of this stuff we talk about as being a common occurrence, but having a company that is specifically dedicated to moving cemeteries, now that you explained it, is really, I think, I hope it's a lovely thing for whoever's
and they
spirit or whatever is
they
there.
have priests and rabbis and stuff like that. That
well, that's nice.
Throw water around and smoke and all that sort of stuff. But these guys, it's not just guys in blue jeans and dirty boots. These are multimillionaires doing this.
They're smart. They're smart.
Yeah, they're smart guys. They're engineers. They're surveyors. They really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you would have to.
Oh yeah. One little mess up and somebody's going to sue you.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that is super interesting. So, kind of along that same line, I work out with a trainer.
Oh.
And across the street from
Wait a minute. You drink box wine and you work out with a trainer?
I know.
The two just don't match.
I know. It's not good. And I shouldn't have mentioned that because I told him I haven't been drinking lately. Dang it.
Wow. Man, he's going to make you suffer tomorrow.
He is. But so there is like a little kind of church cemetery across the street from his gym. And he had been going on Ancestry.com and come to find out some relatives from way back are buried in that little church cemetery.
Yeah.
And so he has been going over there and kind of just checking it out. And he had a good question, and I've seen this in old cemeteries as well. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have as well. But there were a lot of spots that just had like a rock laid on them. They weren't... They're not tombstones. They're not markers. They're just a rock. What is that about?
Tombstones.
They're tombstones.
Markers.
But it doesn't have anything on them. Is it maybe like stillborn?
No.
Just
poor people.
Okay.
They're poor people. Even in the old days, the 1800s, granite upright markers were expensive things. Where when you see these old cemeteries with these elaborate obelisks, these angels weeping over it, those cost a fortune back then. The equivalent of a couple of $100,000.
Wow.
I mean, these people had some money that did that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They would a lot of times get funeral statuary shipped in from Italy. Because Italy was renowned for their marble. But what happened, and a lot of people think when they see those stones that it's a slave cemetery.
Yeah, that was our automatic thought. I was like, I bet it's slaves.
Yeah.
But then, like, looking at the age of the cemetery, it looks like it wouldn't be that time period. I don't know.
Well, if it's around the turn of the century, of the 20th century, there are still a lot of ex-slaves, free slaves, that were around. They lived up into the 30s and
I guess that's
40s,
true. Yeah.
Yeah. And traditionally, they marked a grave with a stone. Okay.
And I've seen that in your cemeteries in the past that have had slave cemeteries, slave sections. It was a big stone, and that's why I just automatically thought.
Yeah, but they didn't need to know. They didn't need to put a name on it. Because they remembered them. Okay. They remembered that that's Aunt Lolly Mae, and she was 102 when she died in 36.
And they passed it on.
And they would take their children there. You've heard of it. Started out as Decoration Day, then it developed into Memorial Day.
Yes.
And it was decorating graves of fallen soldiers from the Confederacy, from the Union, from the Spanish-American War and things like that, okay? They would go and have picnics. It was very, very common to have picnics. There was a cemetery down the road from my grandmother that had polo fields. And people would play polo on the weekends, and people would go down and have picnics, watch them play polo, go visit a relative or whatever. So the ex-slaves would take their children to the cemeteries, have picnics,
tell them
play,
stories.
tell them a story about Aunt Lolly Mae or Grandpa Jones or whatever,
Okay.
to where it makes them remember them.
That's really neat.
And then they're not all of them are slaves. Some of them are just poor people.
Yeah.
That can't afford it.
Yeah.
And they just put a rock there and will always remember that's my mama right there. You know. And that's why those stones are there.
Yeah.
It's actually a marker. It's actually a head stone. And whoever put it there remembered.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's really neat. It's really
kind of touching.
Yeah, it really is, and it's like a great way of, I guess, the passing along of storytelling and families. That's how it was done in the South and probably all over the country for years and years and years.
Yes.
Well, that was really good. And we have some more interesting cemetery questions, but hang on for just a second when you hear from our sponsor, and we will be right back. Beach Too Sandy, Water Too Wet is a comedy podcast featuring brother and sister duo Alex and Christina as they recap dramatic readings of one-star reviews written by real people with not-so-real problems. Whether it's a bar's no throw-up policy, a barista who's just too friendly, or a school psychologist's fashion sense, prepare for equal amounts of laughter and eye-rolling. Listen to Beach Too Sandy, Water Too Wet on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast apps. You can also find them on all social media platforms at Beach Too Sandy. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
And I have a question.
Oh?
Okay, so we moved around like gypsies when we were kids, but we lived on a farm for a while, and there were headstones in the backyard. And it was a lot of acreage. And I remember seeing them as a kid. Well, can you just bury somebody in your yard like that?
No.
Were there people really buried there?
No.
Why were there headstones in our yard?
It was a mistake. The fella that built that house had a friend that was in the monument business. And when monument people make a mistake, a dreadful mistake on a marker, instead of throwing them away, he'd go get them. And he was going to build like a walkway. Okay? Well, it was a mistake because these are highly polished granite markers.
Yeah.
Now, what happens to granite markers in the rain? They get slick as owl's grease.
Yes.
You know? And you step on them and boom.
Oh, my gosh.
So after he fell a couple of times, they decided to just dig them up and throw them over to the side.
Well, I hope none of my little kid friends are listening because I recall taking them over there and being like, look, there's dead people in our yard.
They forgot.
Yeah, they forgot by now. That's something that you don't forget, though. If a friend takes you to a special spot in their yard and there's cemetery headstones there, that's weird. That's something you remember.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Well, we got a question off of Instagram,
Ooh.
And
I never answered a question off of Instagram, have I?
I think we do.
Oh, do
yeah,
you? Okay.
yeah. But Michelle, she wants to know if you have ever, through your cemetery acquisitions, bought a cemetery and the records weren't quite right. So, for example, have you ever looked at the records, sold a plot, go out there to dig it up, and there's already somebody in there?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you just
cuss.
Oh, I bet.
You cuss.
I bet.
And you look around, make sure nobody's looking.
Oh my God. Do you just kick the dirt back in real quick?
What you got to do, and it's really a lengthy situation.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
And that you've got to, let me start. Most cemeteries have meticulous record keeping.
Yes.
Most cemeteries are mapped to the square inch. I don't care how many acres there are.
Yeah.
They know where every square inch is. They know they have copies of the contracts where you sold stuff. They have copies of the contracts where you buried people. They have copies of cards showing ownership, and all of this in your file. So when I go pull your file, all of this is in here.
And how long do you keep the files? Like forever?
Forever.
Okay.
Forever. Now, a lot of cemeteries we back up everything on computer.
Yeah.
To where if there's a fire, we've got backup.
Yeah.
In the cloud.
Oh, look at
Yeah,
you! You know, first you start podcasting, then you talk about the cloud.
Yeah, I'm clouding now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you've got to go through all of that to find out where the mistake was, who this person is, okay? And a lot of times within a day, you'll be able to figure it out. It's like a puzzle.
Oh, gosh.
And you've got to match dates and approximate dates. You've got to search the health department records.
Do you have to tell the people, like family members, like, oh, just kidding, they're not really over there, they're right here? Or do you not have that outreach contact?
Well, what happens is this. A lot of times when you're filling out all the paperwork, I say, okay, now give me a phone number.
Yeah.
And we're going to bury Mom. Okay? So give me a phone number. So you give me Mom's phone number.
Well, she just died.
So 30 days from now, I try to call you. I can't get you.
Oh, my.
Because I asked for a phone number. I meant your phone number, but you gave me your mom's phone number.
Who's dead?
Who's dead and ain't paying the bill no more.
Yeah, exactly. Verizon's like, not today.
So, it's hard sometimes to get in touch with folks and say, hey. But what you do is you make all the corrections necessary to where you know for a fact that's Jane Doe.
Yeah.
And she was buried on this date. And, it's wonderful if you've got old grounds employees.
Oh,
that were, I remember that. We did that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
So then you start doing the investigative work to figure it out. Now, you talked about old cemeteries earlier.
Yes.
That's the nightmare.
Yeah.
Because in 1870, their records were like, I had an old cemetery on the side of Missionary Ridge, and they had records like John Smith, kicked in the head by a mule.
Oh, God.
Died 3 days later. All of this type of stuff. So the dates may not be accurate. They may have the date that he was buried, but not the date he died.
Right.
They may have the date he died, not the date he was buried.
Right.
So you get into the 120 or 130-year-old cemeteries, all you can do is do the best you can do.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that was another question from my trainer. He was wanting to know, is there a place that you can go to, like, find where people are buried? Like, do you know of like a website or something? You just type in a name and can maybe find somebody? Yeah.
There's and I use the term loosely, organization called Grave Finders. And I always call them a bunch of busybodies. But they'll come in and they get pretty demanding sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. And they'll have a list of 20 people. I need you to find these 20 people in your cemetery. Well, why? They're out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with Find a Grave, or Grave Finders, and we need to have this on our website.
Is it because somebody requests it? Or, okay.
Yeah. It's because my granddaddy lived there 70 years ago, and he died, and I want to know if he's buried in your cemetery, so I can
send them flowers.
I guess
I don't know.
I don't know. It hasn't bothered you for the last 70 years.
Yeah.
But
it's like when I asked when I moved to Atlanta, my grandmother, your mother, was like, oh, my daddy's buried in Atlanta. Do you know where he's at? I was like, there's like a million cemeteries here. I have not run across him yet, but I will let you know if I do.
See, I remember her. She would say, I know he was buried behind that store.
Yeah, in Atlanta.
Oh, the store in Atlanta, you mean?
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got 7 million people in one store.
Yeah, that's right.
But, I know that these people are providing a good service.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know that they're very well-meaning people.
Yeah, you're just busy.
But see, I've got a lot to do. And, if some of them are very understanding and you say, look, I'm going to work on this. It may take me a week. Yeah. But I'll get it done and I'll get it to you.
That's pretty fair, yeah.
And then other people say, no, I'll wait on it. Well, honey, you're going to be waiting a while.
I hope you brought your sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
But that's a group, and there are other groups out there that do that. Yeah. And it's all retired people.
Yeah, like are interested in history and maybe hiking around in pretty old cemeteries.
And they go to the cemetery every day to see their wife or their husband.
They're like, I'm there anyway.
Yeah,
might as well just stroll around.
They sign up for this, and they'll get emails. I need you to find Joe Blow. And so they'll go to the various cemeteries and church cemeteries and country cemeteries and stuff like that.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Now, the problem with country cemeteries and church cemeteries are, you've been driving down a little 2-lane country road.
Yes.
And you see this pasture.
Oh, yeah.
And out in the middle of the pasture is a stand of trees. That's a cemetery. That was a church cemetery. Everybody moved away. Church fell in on itself. Trees grew up through the graves. And the farmer, instead of cutting down all the trees, because there's headstones in there, he's spooked.
Yeah.
So he just plows around it.
You see that a lot, too.
Yeah, and that's it. Those are all family cemeteries, church cemeteries. Somebody owned that farm 150 years ago and died.
Yeah.
And they buried him on there, and they started a family cemetery. Well, over the last 150 years,
the families moved
all over the world.
Yeah.
And they don't even know that there is a family cemetery. Yeah. And that's my pitch about don't go into a family cemetery.
I know. I feel like through all of these stories, do not go to like your local gas station and ask if you can be buried there, basically. Yeah. It's like, go to a cemetery where this is their job and that's what they do. And your body will be, you're not going to have a tree growing through you in the next 100 years.
Exactly.
I'm in. Sign me up.
Too late, I already have.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for all these awesome questions. Keep them coming. We love getting your emails at casketsandcocktails@gmail.com. Also, follow us on social media and direct message us. I try to get to all the direct messages and try to get to most of the questions. But please take a couple of minutes and shoot us your questions and call us. We have a voicemail as well. The number is in the show notes, so be sure to give us a call. We love hearing from you. And if you have time, rate and review us on your favorite podcast. It really helps little independent podcasts like us.
Now listen to me.
Okay.
You Americans are looking bad with the Australians and the Great Britons.
Yes.
And even the French.
Yes.
And the South Americans now.
Yes.
And you Americans are letting me down.
Y'all are slacking.
Go, let's make America great again and start asking questions.
Don't do it on Twitter, though. Like,
No. Somebody will firebomb you or something. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, guys, we just really appreciate all of you, and this show would not be a success without you. And I'm having so much fun with you. I'm love doing this.
With you. This is great fun.
Yeah, it's super fun, and we love hearing from you guys. So don't be shy. Give us a shout.
Yes, please.
Please.
You know why? Because we'll be the last ones to let you down.
wanted to start your own podcast just like we did over here at Caskets and Cocktails, you can do it yourself. Go to anchor.com. It's free, it's easy, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. You can record and edit. They'll distribute your podcast everywhere. You can make money from your podcast. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Well, welcome back.
It's good to be back.
So, keeping with the spooky theme, I love this story. It is one of yeah.
It's
what happens when you get scared in the cemetery. So this is the perfect example.
Well, we built a community mausoleum, and it was like it's 180 crypts or something. It was a nice size mausoleum. For a smaller cemetery, and we wanted to paint the interior of all the crypts white, like a sealant, and so
why do you to keep them from dripping on each other through it? Or is that what you do?
Yeah.
Ew, that's gross.
Just in case.
Ew.
Just in case.
Okay.
Actually, never mind. So we hired this painter. And it was an older fellow, and he had his two sons that were working with him.
Okay.
And you could tell that Dad was a little uncomfortable.
That doesn't sound like my ideal paint job.
Well, especially because you had to climb into the crypt and paint the crypt and lay on your back and roller the ceiling of the crypt.
Like you're painting your own coffin.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, dear God, that makes me throw up.
You paint your way out, and then go to the next one. And he was complaining to his
sons.
Dad? Yeah, the dad was complaining to his sons. He just didn't like it at all.
I don't blame him.
So what happened was one of the sons went around and got in the crypt that was directly behind the crypt he was working in, and there's a common concrete wall. Okay. So he started tapping on that wall with a hammer, and tip, 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 and then he started hitting it hard. Bang, bang, bang.
Oh my God.
Well, it scared the hell out of Daddy, and he jumped up. Well, he's in a concrete box. He jumped up and he busted his head, and then he was running almost backwards, crab crawling.
Oh my God.
And it skinned his hands and his knees and his elbows, skinned him all up. And he got out of there, and he told the sons, he said, we got to go home. And they said, hey, Dad, I'm sorry, we can finish. He said, no, I've pooped my pants.
Oh my God.
So he pooped his pants, and they had to go home and change. They never came back.
Yeah, they didn't come back. They were like, it is not worth the money.
Yeah. We had to hire somebody else.
I was going to say, you would have, that's like the most claustrophobic.
Oh, it had to be.
Like panic-inducing scenario I can think of. Oh, hell no.
No.
I'll do a lot of stuff, but I ain't doing that. I don't care how much you pay me.
On my list of things that I ain't doing, that I ain't doing.
Yeah, that I ain't doing either. Well, guys, we gave you a little bit of spooky and a little bit of fun spooky with what happens at the cemetery if you get too scared.
Yeah.
Hopefully nobody's out there pooping their pants at the cemetery.
Yeah, really.
That's embarrassing. But we have some fun, exciting news.
Yes.
So we have an agent.
Wow.
Doesn't that sound fancy?
Yeah, Tom Cruise has an agent.
I know.
We have an agent too.
Us too. So, but we're really excited. So we're working with a new agent. They're doing all sorts of really cool stuff for us.
We're excited.
So we are having a new website designed, which is going to be amazing. And there's some really great ways that you can support the show. Historically, we haven't really done much with the fundraising.
No, we haven't.
No, we've had a couple of our listeners donate and give us some awesome stuff. But this time we are doing Patreon, and we are doing it we think in a really cool way. There's several different levels out there. And so what you can do is go out to Patreon, go to our website, click on our Patreon link, or find us on Patreon. And Patreon?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
But
It's
you
over
guys know
my head.
what we're talking about.
Yeah. If you know how to find our podcast, you know what we're talking about.
Exactly. But you can go out there, and there are some really cool things that you can get for just a couple of dollars a month to support this show. So if you like us, feel free, go out there, take a look. It might be something that you're interested in. We even have a really cool opportunity for folks to do Skype cocktail parties with us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I like cocktail parties.
So if you want to have a one-on-one session with me and Mr. Danny, and we'll have a cocktail with you over the telephone, and you can ask us all the questions you want to ask.
Unfortunately, at my age, I haven't been Skyped in a long time.
Oh, God. Ew. Yuck. I don't know what you're talking about, but this is a video on the computer.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Oh, ew. Note to self, people, we will have our clothes on. Do not get worried about creepy Mr. Danny. But they're coming up with some really great ways to help grow our show, and that's just one of them.
And if you're real, real rich, you could send us $1 million or something.
Oh, well, I don't even want to know what you'd do for that.
It has to do with Skype.
Well, guys, so getting the website up and going, it's going to have an all brand new look. We are helping to do the Patreon stuff. We're also, future episodes, we are bringing on some of our friends.
Yes.
We're bringing on death care, some of our friends in the death care industry.
Guest stars,
because Mr. Danny has great stories. But our friends have some really great stories, too.
I have friends that have been in it for 60 years. I've got friends that have been in it 50 years.
Yeah.
I've got friends that have been in it all their lives.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, I've just been in it a short time, about 40 years. And you can imagine what their stories are like.
Exactly. So this season is going to be packed with all sorts of exciting stuff. And we would really, really love your support by at least telling your friends. So if you don't mind, when you have this episode, rate us, review us on your favorite podcast platform, and then tell your friends. Share us on social media, tag us. We really want to grow, and we can't do it without our awesome listeners.
That's
and we're
right.
growing so quickly.
Hey, we're doing our job now that we're back from vacation.
Yeah.
We expect you guys to do your job. I hope you're back from vacation.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we can't wait. We're super excited. There's some other really cool stuff that's in the works that we're not supposed to talk about quite yet.
Or our agent will get upset.
That's right. So we have really cool stuff. So be sure to listen in, subscribe, tell your friends, because Caskets and Cocktails will be the last ones to let you down.